Hi there, adapters and adapter tech X people. It's great to have you back. And today we're going to talk on an extended level with Joseph Bojanowski. Joseph is the president of PM Hotel Group. It's a leading and large hotel management company in the United States based in Chevy Chase, Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. And, these are big numbers. We're talking in excess of 70 hotels, 13,000 rooms, and, close to $1 billion in revenue under management. So you can imagine the scale of that. Joseph is definitely an overachiever here. It's on every single board I can think of, from Hilton All Suites Advisory Council, the Home2 Suites Advisory Council, the Marriott Owners Advisory Council, the Sheraton Brand Advisory Board, and also participating at the board level with AHLA, the American Hotel Lodging Association. So this is a great story. And the piece that I really like is when you look at what's on, how they think about problems or what they are. It says we're innovators, entrepreneurs, curators, and collaborators. We're inspired to create and, basically drive, optimize performance. And, the bit on the back, maybe a little bit long, but the flip side of it is there is a real caring culture at PM Hotel Group, and that's what makes it fun. And so, Joseph, you're with us. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Sean.
We just had that squash 10 minutes, that quick hit stuff. And, we covered a lot in a short period of time. And it's amazing what you guys have all done. I mean, you grew from what, 124 room hotel?
Yeah, that's right.
124 room hotel to now, 13,000. How the hell do you do that?
Carefully and with really the core and the key to success is with great people. We have always focused on and know that with our business that talent and great people are the key drivers. And when you combine that with great systems, a solid strategy, and some size that you can leverage, it brings benefits and outsized performance. And that outsized performance allows you to keep growing and growing in a way that is digestible and strategic and aligned with not only meeting our goals as a company, but providing opportunities for that talent.
But you've been there since the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, I really think you're Benjamin Button. I really do. I haven't changed a bit in all these years. And that's a good thing, by the way, is, so when this story, I mean, that's a big leap, right? And that is a leap of scale. It's a leap of learning. It's a adaptability across multiple crises, global crises, as well as, when owners go a little crazy. Not that you would say that all owners are saying, I'll just say it myself. So that pathway, I'm fascinated about your growth trajectory and how you've, evolved and how you start thinking from 124 room hotel to 13,000. What are some of those milestones that stand out and say, wow, I need to brush up on?
Yeah, we always, so we had 124 rooms, but we acted like we had 11,000 rooms, and we always thought big thoughts. We always had big plans, and what we knew at the beginning was that a solid strategy with a structure that allowed for scalable execution and ability to achieve results, and combined with an entrepreneurial spirit that constantly evaluated what was happening in the markets in which we do business and the industry in which we do business, and where the opportunities were, would allow us to grow and grow in a way that was strategic, that was aligned around achieving success for our ownership groups, for our associates, and then for our core business, which is the hotel management company.
And that sounds remarkably polished. But these things are never polished. There's always bumps. So what would you have some examples of like where the bumps were and what the key learnings out of that? In the quick hit, you mentioned, basically when there's problems and the bullets are flying, that's where the opportunity is. And what stood out over a 20 plus year career and rising to the top of the organization
Yeah.
that says, this is what I learned from some of these bumps.
So, it's interesting, and we've had the great pleasure for those of us that are working right now of leading the companies through and experiencing in the U.S. the Great Recession, the deepest recession that has ever occurred in this country, even deeper than what turned out to be the Great Depression. Not quite as long lasting as that, but catastrophic in nature, when we lost 25% of our business, and how we were going to get through that and how we were going to survive, and the challenges and the economy in general, and the existential sort of threats around our business, and the most of them being external. And we finally make our way through that. And we thought, wow, we made it. And that was the worst experience we will ever have. And then we hit 2020, and we would have been happy to have the 20% revenue declines when our revenue went down by 80%.
Are you telling me that pain is relative?
Pain is relative, and it was horrible. But it causes you to, really take a look at what your, at its essence, your company is, what you need to survive, how you organize around those key elements and those key success factors and those key individuals, and you regroup and you move forward. And so our lessons learned were that talent and teamwork and people are at the core of our business and success. And what we also learned, which we knew already as a core value of our company, entrepreneurial spirit, is that you have to be ready for change. You have to embrace change. You have to be at the forefront of change. And we dug in deep in the middle of the pandemic and looked for opportunities of how we could change our business in a meaningful way, in an environment where we were much smaller than we were before, but we were going to scale back up within what we believe to be a 12 to 24 month period of time. And that's what happened. So takes on that resiliency, talent, and technology.
Sorry to cut across you there. So when you were sitting at the table, because certainly our roots in hospitality, we're the consummate we. It's very, it's a team building, and it's team built on strength. But there's a leader, and you're sitting in that chair, and I think our audience really wants to know, going, okay, there's that cold sweat moment, and you're going, I got to go in. This is hell on earth right now. We don't know what's coming. But your team is looking to you to say, okay, here's some suggestions on how we could handle this. Where did you find that strength? And give us some insight into maybe that first, second, third meeting, I don't know, where you had to go, okay, here's a path forward. This is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So, having had the benefit of gone through the Great Depression, and then in the U.S. Briefly, and not as catastrophic compared to these, but at the time, 9/11, where air traffic was shut down, and in the hospitality business and providing overnight accommodations, we need individuals to be traveling, right? So, but particularly the lesson that we learned coming out of the Great Recession in 2009 and 10 and 11 is that you need to be decisive in your actions. That the companies that did not take decisive action and were incremental in their approach to addressing the issues that they were facing are not here today. They failed. They went out of business. We knew very quickly coming into this one that it was going to. It was a little bit different, and that it was not an economic issue. It was a health and a pandemic issue. But what we knew was we needed to do three things very quickly. We needed to assess. We then needed to mitigate very quickly, and then we needed to move to a recovery plan. So the first thing was to assess the situation, determine what we were going to do. So we pulled the executive team together. We made decisions, and for us, at the core was this was a threat to our business, and we needed to be alive to make it to the other side, and that we would be able to create opportunity again, but it wasn't going to be in that moment. And unfortunately, our decisive action was around cash preservation and expense reduction. And in a business where our largest variable expense is payroll, unfortunately, that's where the largest cut in expenses came in. We laid off over 3,000 people in a 1-week period of time. We then moved to recovery, to ensuring that it was very critical at that moment that our communication was clear, that was the action we were taking, and that the remainder of us were in it together, that we had a plan to recovery. We put a 44-page document out, which was a plan to recover, so that we did not lose the talent we had, that in an environment where there's stress and fear and all the other things that were coming, both on a probably more on a personal level than professional level, that we needed clarity of communication was essential to getting through that. So assess, take decisive action, communicate what you did, why you did it, and what your path forward is, and rally the team around that.
Yeah, you may just decide not to answer this question, so that'll be fine. So clearly you did. Yeah, it's all yours. So
I reserve the right.
You reserve the right. Oh yeah, conditional thinking. I love it. So when you go through this and you come out the other side and you see the others, and the others are a big swatch, what do you think? I would imagine that some other companies probably had a similar approach, right? Let's think about this. But you guys clearly came out very different, and we'll go into that. What did the others not do that you did? That was different.
Firmly believe that the key to success for us and the key to moving forward was to have a recovery plan in place within 90 days. And while others were still assessing and mitigating the damage to their business, we had already pivoted to a recovery mode, and we were moving forward. And in 2020, our portfolio of hotels grew market share by 28.3%. We were clear in our purpose. We were clear in where we thought the opportunities were. We rallied our resources around it. And one of the decisions that we made in that was, because it was health related and it was not a large economic issue, we firmly believe that a recovery would be much faster than, say, 2009, where it took us to 2015 to fully recover because it was an economic issue, it was a capital markets issue. This wasn't it, right? So it poised for a quick recovery. We did not lay off almost anyone in our corporate/support center office. And so from a talent perspective, we did not have to rebuild our team. From a talent perspective, we were ready to move forward very quickly when the opportunities presented themselves for recovery. And then from a technology perspective, we dug in deep and created some new systems and ways of doing business that were highly scalable in a more efficient way, that required less human intervention in harnessing data and metrics and key performance indicators and all the things you need to drive your business, but to do it in a more efficient way.
So what I'm hearing that others should really listen to from this conversation is that you quickly got to a vision of moving forward, 90 days. So we went through the situation of assessing the understanding the mitigation component, then to recovery, then to moving forward, not just recovery to a standstill, but to a growth mode. That's extraordinary when you think about it. And your team, did your team go, Joseph, you're nuts, and that we're going into recovery mode, and now we're going into growth mode 90 days into a global pandemic? Did you see anybody going, the boss, he's kind of lost the nut bag here, but I mean, or did everybody go, God, that makes sense, let's get on with it?
Yeah, decisiveness is a key, and you know, and you mentioned it as a leader. Sometimes consensus is a great way to make a decision, but at some point someone needs to make a decision, and you get the best and the brightest, and you gather that information, and you make decisions. And those are occasionally very difficult decisions, and they impact humans and their lives. And in a business where the human element is our differentiator and it's our core driver of value, where that is essentially our key success factor. Those decisions were difficult, but they have to be made, and I think people respect that. There's a plan, that you made a decision, that you're decisive, that you're moving forward, and that you articulate it in a way that they can rally around it. And at some point, the adrenaline and all the thing, if you're moving fast, like sometimes people don't have time to think before you're well onto the plan. And then they're like, wow, he wasn't that, before they can think about whether it's a dumb idea or not, you kind of move down the road a little bit, and they can see that it really was an okay plan, and there's some success being realized from it.
Well, so we fast forward now. Yeah. God, I'm just tired listening. I feel as if I'm on board. Sign me up. Okay. This sounds good. So now we get to the point where you're through all this, and, 28% growth, 2020, you've capitalized on the plan. And then we hit this quickly. I mean, last year and this year, between the great resignation and possibly now the great regret, or the rebalancing of the bargain between workforce and the job. And I know that you guys put a huge amount of work into reshaping the narrative between what is the business to why is it a great place to work here, and please join us. Can you just give us some of the the granularity of this cultural shift to communicate with a workforce that has now a very broad range of industries to, basically lever their skills?
Yeah, we had the benefit of being a geographically diverse sort of business model, right? Where we've got hotels on the West Coast that are over 3,000-4,000 miles away from us, and so we had a group of people that had always worked remotely, that were the ones that were the primary interfaces with the hotels. And so we had systems and structure already set up to work in that way, and so it wasn't that big a deal for us. Although it's interesting, where our first thought was, okay, access to information, access to technology, aggregate data, make it available to people. Then the second thought was, as soon as we made it available to people, is how do we secure that so it's not available to people? So okay, now secure, and the one of the challenges and vulnerabilities there in that diverse workforce, and moving your data and the performance data and all the information that people need to run a business from a remote sort of model, is that information's out there for others, right? And so how do you secure that? And that's a risk. It's a very big risk when you're accommodating that workforce, and when you have a payroll person who's working remotely, how do you protect that data when you have checks that are being printed, when you have competitive data and financial data being exchanged and made available to others? How do you protect it in a way that doesn't create vulnerability for the business and liability for the company as well, right? So there's challenges with all of that and how you connect with it. But at the end of the day, we moved to a model that we realized we needed to sort of shift the way we engaged with our associates and our customers as well, and to be able to communicate them in a way that demonstrated our sense of purpose as a company, and why we were a great company to work for, and why we had great places to stay. So our phraseology and everything around that changed during that period of time.
And so now you've got a multifaceted, multi-sided constituents. So what about your owners? That you're some case you are an owner, an investor, in other cases you're a third-party manager. what were some of the themes and sensitivities and emotions that were placed on your shoulders and your team's shoulders from the owner group? Did they think you were moving fast enough or not moving fast enough? What was their take on it?
Yeah. Not to get into any specificity around any particular ownership group or property, but when revenue is cut by 80%, clearly the revenue does not cover expenses, much less principal, interest.
Mm-hmm.
In our market, in our business, it's real estate, and so there's a tremendous amount of capital expenditures that are required from a design perspective, from a maintenance of a building perspective. So those were all considerations. And then negotiating through and restructuring financing, whether it be deferment of principal and then interest and use of funds for uses that were not intended. Think capital reserves being used for principal and interest and all that. And then when you finally get out of this, what's looming is all of that deferment. So now you need
to be clear for those that deferment means that there's an agreement between a lender or some lender that's been deferred for a period of time, but it's still owed.
Right. So then you look at the business model, which was built around, servicing, so a base amount of debt and interest and other expenses, and suddenly the needs have grown higher. So for that, and your profit margins are now the only way to sort of meet those financial requirements. And in an environment where, as we've mentioned earlier, there's some severe cost and issues around energy, which don't seem to be going away anytime soon. There's inflation on cost of goods, and we're in the food business as well. We serve food. It's a critical component of our experience. And even as recently as August, food costs were up by 11.4%. And how do you achieve these higher profit margins in an environment where you have wage pressure, you have energy pressure, cost pressure, you have cost of goods pressure? It's technology, and it's using it in a way that does not take away from your core mission of creating experiences and the value that comes from those experiences, and then being able to charge for them. Arguably, it's more important than it ever was, but to do it in a way that meets everyone's needs, from the customer's needs to an owner's needs to the associate's needs. And in some extent, if we're in a branded environment with companies like Marriott or Hilton, to meet all their needs as well.
That's tiring. That's a lot of needs. So you need to go run or something, and we're going to get into running.
Yeah.
So now we're kind of kicked down the door about tech and tech enablement, and as you know, we have a sister program with Adapters TechX, and exploring that in the sense of can you share some practical examples of the cause and effect, right? So we had a cause, there was an effect of that, and the outcome was, and you use tech as an enabler. I've heard you use that a number of times. Do you have some examples you can share about, how that transformed your business, and what sort of current tech do you use in a way that you didn't before?
Yeah, so we've got multiple businesses and within our and constituents within that, and we also have multiple tech platforms. So, the one being the hotel-based, how we source and transact with the users of our hotels, from e-commerce to reservation system to all the technology that's used in the hotel from the customer side. We then have a suite of technology for our associates. So, how do they schedule, how they find their own hours and other things that that are required within that.
And you've got a name for that. I know you've got a name for that. So what is that
we
name?
do. It's The Edge by PM Hotel Group.
Yeah.
And so The Edge by PM Hotel Group is a suite of technology that meets all those needs. And then sort of the third big component of that is that we're a management company, and within that we need to provide strategy and structure to running this business and all of our hotels and all of our people. So we have three distinctly different constituencies there, and then being able to provide financial information to our owners within that. So when you look at that, I think what our core focus was around the management company and adopting technology in a way that allowed us to aggregate, evaluate, harness, and push, so sort of dashboard and push data and information to our fewer number of associates that we had, who needed to do the same work that was there before, and our guest expectations never changed and arguably grew because we're charging more than we ever did, and do it in a way that's aligned around the business objectives and the key performance areas of the company, so that our associates did not spend time analyzing information that was better and more efficiently and faster analyzed by software, by machine learning, by artificial intelligence, and dashboarded and pushed out to them so that they could focus on the real key drivers of success in our business.
So, I mean, we both know that we've been working in hotels and that environment for many years. And I still have just strolled up to many front desks, and I still don't know what some receptionists are doing going. And those of you that are listening to this as a podcast, I am trying to type on a keyboard, and I still can't check in most large platforms without even talking to somebody. Why are we still there?
Because we might be the slowest industry in the world around the adoption of technology. Yeah. And it has been a weak point, and that's the reason why, because we have yet, and so to be clear, as a management company, that's not our technology. It's right around companies, like some of the branding,
big franchisors,
like Hilton, Marriott, those kind of companies that provide some base that sort of distribution channel. Even if you look at Booking.com and Expedia and other methods of booking business, and sort of the core technology that all of that has to run through is a choke point, and you have to dumb down your technology to get through that sort of that reservation system, and it causes every other sort of technology component along the way to not be as effective, efficient, and as forward-looking as it could be.
Yeah. So we're on a mission at Adapters TechX, particularly to go, can the big platforms please read the book about there is a different way? But we'll leave it at that because you're on all the advisory council, so don't want to get you.
Look for great things to be happening there in the next 24 months. I think transformational change in the way that's done, and also the way our product is sold, call it shelved, if you will, from a retail perspective. So think more of an Amazon type attribute-driven model for pricing and purchasing.
Isn't it great that we finally came into that's been around 15 years, but that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, there you go. We're notoriously slow. We think it's great, and it's been 15 years. So.
We're not slow, Joseph. We are just making sure that the proof of concept has been there and that somebody else has ironed out all the other problems, and then we jump in.
Yeah.
That's the way.
We evaluate. It took a little while. Yeah.
So a long period of assessment,
Exactly.
So, clearly you're a long distance runner. And as we start to wrap up here, how did that happen? How did you get into running to, run? How many, like when you say long distance, what's your average run?
I run during the week, a couple of mornings a week, and those are typically 1 hour runs. So think somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 miles. Yeah. And then on the weekends, I run at least 10 miles on a Saturday, and usually 15-ish on a Sunday. So think an hour and a half to 2 hours. So I've run 26 marathons. I've run them all over the U.S. and internationally as well, including the Great Wall of China Marathon.
Was that when you were living there? You did that?
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't as difficult. Yeah, I happened to be living there about 30 minutes from the start line, so it was easier. Wow. Yes. Wow. I find that running has a lot of sort of parallels to business, and from the resilience and that's needed to get through difficulties within that. When you run 26 miles, not every mile is great, and you don't feel great on every one. Although you typically, if you've put in the training and you put in the proper planning, you do feel good at the end. But I also find it to be a huge stress reliever. I do not run with music. I tend to run in nature, and it allows me to think. And so whether it's resolving problems or it's free thinking about new and better ways to do things, or what's happening in the world, it's just a great time for me to be out there thinking big thoughts, or big solutions to big problems. And I tend to be able to resolve those while I'm running.
And do you like the president that you are, and there are some presidents that run, do you bring an entourage with you to, and kind of go, we need to talk, come on a run? It's an endurance thinking hour.
Okay, so I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but what you're trying to, what the implication of that question is. However, it's the answer is yes. During the weekday, I run with some people who I've known for a while who are in this industry. I tend to talk more, but on the weekends it's alone. And then when we do conferences and internally, we do have a morning run for those that want to join us, and we do go out for runs together. So it's great for team building and just spending time together, getting to know one another a little bit more casually than in the work environment.
Well, as you know, I'm a biker, and
yeah,
I know you guys, the runners, try and push us off the road, but we like you guys, we really do. And
we don't like you guys. Some advance notice would be good when you pass.
Yeah, you know what? That's the weirdest thing in Europe, particularly northern parts. They don't announce, and I'm the guy that says on your left, on your right, and go, just for your own safety, please open your mouth. This would be good. But anyway, getting back to the endurance, I agree with you. I mean, it's just one of those mindsets about the pain, and we call it suffering. And I'm a climber, so it's about a mindset, and it's amazing how much your body will do if you push it. And I think that's a great parallel to business, and the way that you push the business and gotten people through the pain, because there is that gain at the end of it. And it's a great metaphor, especially from finding balance. So finally, as we what's your guilty food? I know you're healthy as hell, but you got to have a comfort food. What is it?
Okay, so I am a vegetarian, and it's possible to be an endurance athlete without eating meat product as well. So I do think that diet's important. I think that it has an impact on your physiology, which has an impact on your life in general and your emotional health as well. But I enjoy.
Nobody's looking, and we won't tell anybody. Anybody. Nobody's looking.
Yeah. So I will say, I think, my approach to diet is it's healthful, and healthful means it's okay to have a dessert if it makes you feel good and you're not overdoing it. So I am a dessert person. I like dessert. I think it's a great way to end a meal, and I think it's healthful, and it makes you feel good, at least for me. So
well, don't keep it to yourself. What's your favorite dessert? Come on.
Oh gosh. So I don't really have a favorite. I'm not a big ice cream
pie guy, an ice cream guy. Where are we at here?
Not ice cream guy, more sort of a baked goods guy.
Baked goods. Okay, so you're going to raid the cafe. You're going to raid the patisserie.
I'm going to raid the patisserie for sure.
Good man. Yeah. That's it. Guilty pleasure.
Tarts, and then also some meringues and things like that.
So we've had a quite a long conversation. When you think of some tips and takes now, after now nearly doing this for nearly an hour plus together, well, what's your advice to somebody who's, let's say, 25 to 35, and they're seeing a path? They've probably got a decent job now at this point, but looking forward, what would be your tip to that 25 to 35-year-old to say, you're in this industry, here's some things to think about?
Wow. I will say that a couple of things to think about is that reputation does matter, and an ethical approach to business does matter in the long term, and it matters in the relationships that you build, and those relationships do provide value along the arc of a career. And as you, well, here we are talking after all these years, right? And that it doesn't mean that you don't make mistakes, and it's really okay to make mistakes. If you made the decision for the right reason, it was the right thing to do at that time, and it was the right reason to do it, and not everything works. So try new things, find out what works best for you, find out where your comfort zone is, and where you thrive personally in this industry. And if you're thriving personally, then generally you're going to thrive in the workplace, and others will recognize it, and you'll achieve your goals both personally and professionally. But for me, ethics matter, and reputation that comes from that matters, and it does have an impact over the arc of a career.
There's no way I could do that any better. What an outstanding response. And for those of you listening, that was one of those questions they just dropped on Joseph. So, clearly extraordinarily thoughtful about the business. So thanks so much on behalf of everybody that's going to be listening to this for sharing so much and being so transparent about your thoughts as, a significant and important leader in the hospitality space, particularly in North America. And good luck with all the councils. Keep them straight. And I'm sure we'll get to the fingerless, non-tactile environment of a check-in. So
coming soon to a touchscreen near you.
That's exactly it. Mm-hmm. So thank you again. So
thank you, Sean.
It's been great having Joseph on. And the stuff that stands out when you listen to the extended version particularly is that, when you assess, mitigate, and think of recovery, you quickly get to what do we do next? And that applies to whether you're the first time leader in a restaurant and you've got your first job, or your first GM's job, or your first VP job, or your first president's job. It's the same, approach and carrying that. And it's been beautifully stitched in by Joseph about reputation drives everything, from when you first get your first job all the way through where you rise up to whatever level you want to be at. The ethical side of making decisions and being able to stand over them because you did the right thing. And then, making room for others probably in there too, and being collaborative. And I think the theme from certainly this great conversation has been a couple of things. One, it's important what we do. Two, challenge the status quo. And three, make time for dessert. So on that note, thanks a million for taking the time. Much thanks to No Vacancy and our friends at Hunter Gatherer that make all this happen. Big call out for Peter Art Lurie. And of course, our friends in other distribution sources. And it's great having you listen to us, and much appreciated. Tune in for another show where you will meet with the adapters. Thanks again.